Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're talking about the BMP-2M. This is a vehicle that I decided to spade basically because of the talk around it. It's one of those vehicles that has always been discussed as being overpowered and annoying to fight against, and after playing it, I understand why. There's a lot of factors with this thing that make it really good at its current BR. And I think it's one of those vehicles that really suffers from that idea of the fact that if it isn't spaded, it should be probably a lot lower BR, but when it is spaded, it's a bit of a monster. It also helps that the 10-0 lineup for the Soviets is really good, even after pushing up the Strela and also pushing up the Object 292, there is still plenty of options at 10-0, including two T-72Bs, the 2S-25M, and even the Shigler that you can bring in as well. The vehicle is not very mobile for a light tank at 10-0. If you actually compare it to stuff like the 2S-38, even stuff like the Puma, it's the little thing that doesn't really work too well for the BMP-2M is its mobility. The actual thing that does work, though, is the fact that it's pretty low profile, and also all of its secondary factors are insane. For example, if you have a look at the turret ring, the targeting speed on this thing is 51 degrees, and also at the same time, its vertical speed is 30 degrees per second, meaning that you can whip around its main gun at a crazy rate. The other thing is it gets its best ATGMs as a stock vehicle, the good old 9M133 ATGMs. These ones are a tandem-warhead ATGM, which basically means you can go through anything that you fight with them. The only issue is the fact that they take a little bit of time to get to the target compared to somebody who can just hammer you with the main gun, which is why I've always preferred using a gun instead of an ATGM, especially at this BR. The other thing is you get access to a HE kind of VT ATGM, which, you know, you can use against helicopters, I suppose, but the elevation of the ATGMs isn't really that good, and also, at the same time, you have to reload. You have to reload the whole set of ATGMs to be able to get access to them, unless you start with them, but it's just not worth it. You might as well just go for the tandems, and then rely on the gun to be able to deal with their targets. So why do I say that this thing isn't very good, you know, when it's stock? And the reason is you don't get the thermals, you don't get those ATGM VTs, you don't get the laser rangefinder, and the main thing is you don't get the APFSDS. The APFSDS on this 30mm makes a huge difference to the vehicle. If you don't have access to it and you only have the default belt, you pen only 65mm with it. And at the same time, you only get half of the rounds in the belt being any use whatsoever. With the APFSDS belt, every single round is APFSDS, and it pens 102, 86, 59. This means with the crazy high fire rate of the gun on the BMP, you are able to do a lot of damage to the side of vehicles. You're able to actually fight a lot of light tanks as well at the same time. Whereas if you don't have access to this, you are heavily reliant on the ATGMs to be able to destroy stuff. And as we talked about, the problem with ATGMs at a tier like this is if you are a person who is using the ATGM, you have to catch people out, because the moment that they hear you fire the ATGM, they turn to you with their very good targeting speed and stabilizer and just shoot you in the face. Because even though you can fire these ATGMs on the move, you need to obviously keep a line of sight to be able to guide the ATGM. So, bit of a pain. The other stuff is the laser rangefinder, and also things like the smoke grenades, and also the mobility options. Pretty much every single modification on this vehicle, apart from maybe the APT in the rank 1, and sometimes the APDS at rank 3, is needed to make this thing a fully combat effective vehicle. A lot of vehicles, like we talked about the Leopard 2A7, right, a little bit ago. Once you're about 20 or 30% of the way through the modifications of the vehicle, you really start feeling its power. With the BMP-2M, I felt like I needed to get through like 70 or 80% of it to finally understand what people were talking about with this machine. because without those mobility upgrades, you are very slow compared to your competition. Pretty much every MBT is faster than you, and also all of the light tanks are faster than you, whether it be the Baglet, the Puma, the 2S38, even sometimes the HSTVL that you can see. But with the modifications, you are still slower than a lot of them, but it at least gives you an opportunity to be able to go around the place. Another problem is the gun depression on this thing. The gun itself and also the ATGMs do not have a very good set of depression. Only -5 on the ATGMs and also -4 on the gun. Obviously, the platform is pretty low, so it's not too bad, but it's just a bit of a pain. But at least, since it's a light tank, you can always scout stuff, which is quite good. You know, even if you're in a position where you can't really deal with anything, at least there's that. And then also you have the track IRST when it comes to the vehicle itself. So you can go after helicopters early game, which is huge, especially with the crazy fire rate of the gun. That one makes just a massive difference. That is probably the biggest thing that this vehicle has access to. The fact that you can keep the air clear at the start of a battle with the track IRST and also with the cannon saved a lot of destructions on my team many different times. You also do have commander controls, which is quite nice. So if somehow you survive a shot, which, let's be honest, does not happen a lot in this machine because it's still just a BMP-2M. It's one of those which, you know, at least you can fire back pretty quickly. And the grenade launcher in the back, I mean, it has this 30mm automatic grenade launcher. It doesn't have a great muzzle velocity on the shells, and also the shells don't really do anything. They're just like random HG shells. Sometimes it is funny just to kind of spam them in areas. It kind of sucks that you can't destroy like buildings with them, but you can destroy like other stuff like fences and things. But for me, what I would do is on conquest maps or stuff like that, where I knew people were going to sit, I would basically spam the shells in those areas kind of in a loopy way, so I could show my teammates where the enemies were. And it seemed to work pretty well, which is quite good. But yeah, the actual like spading of this thing didn't really get fun until we got that APFSDS. Once we got like the engine upgrade and the smoke upgrade, so you could actually kind of move around in this thing, and that was a bit of the issue in my opinion. It just took way too long to get going. I feel like this vehicle, if you take it as a stock vehicle, it's probably like a 9.3 or a 9.0. It's very similar to the Magax in that way, where a lot of the Magax, if you actually strip away their upgrades, or their modifications even, they're like 8.0, 8.3 vehicles, and once you get the modifications, that's when they start raising in BR. The BMP-2M's the same, and that is what makes it an annoying vehicle to balance, because depending on where you are in the Spade, it is way better than previously, and also way worse than what you're going into. At Spaded, though, this is probably not a 10.0 vehicle. It should be a lot higher. But the question is, how many people playing it are actually in that area of having it spaded? I played 123 battles in this thing. I went 118 ground kills with 107 deaths. We had a very high death rate in this thing, and then 21 air kills, which is probably the nicer thing on this. As I said, that multi-role capability really helped it out. But we weren't surviving a lot of matches, because people would just try and run over it, or people would throw, you know, just whatever the kitchen sink they could at it to be able to push the area, because they were in an MBT, and they knew that they could annihilate it. But luckily, because of the lineup of the two T-72Bs, the 2S25M, the Shigler that I was running at the time, or even just the 2S38, or the Terms, or the T80UD, if you had any of those vehicles, you can really have great backups to this thing. So you can play it aggressive, you can go forward, and you can have a good time. So yeah, I get the frustration around this thing. I really do, after finishing it. But at the same time, it's one of those that I feel like you have to give a go for yourself, since it is a squadron vehicle, you know, it's open to more people, and then just see how it feels. Instead of just facing it, see how that stock type feels. See how, you know, the halfway spade feels, because it'll surprise you. It isn't as good in those areas, but when it's spaded, it needs to be a higher BR. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Tullio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pieman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Alan Hacker, Ozzy Panzer, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Cam Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.